Hi everyone, Daniel Linder here. I'm the creator of the relationship model of addiction, and I'm here to support you on your recovery journey, getting out of unhealthy, addictive relationships and into healthy, emotionally nourishing relationships. How does that happen? I laid out 3 stages of recovery from the relationship model of addiction perspective. And the 3 stages of recovery are, again, sustained stabilization, which I call the breakup, developing a relationship with yourself, stage 2, and once you have a relationship with yourself formed and developed, then you get into stage 3, where you're in a much better condition and state to create healthy, emotionally nourishing relationships. A lot of the last several weeks and today was focused on the breakup, stage 1, sustained stabilization. So I want to give you a better idea, a clearer understanding of what this entails, the terrain that you need to cross into and through in this as you're breaking up. So again, just reminding you that from the relationship model perspective, the definition of addiction is a relationship with a means of relief. Thus, getting back to now, stage 1 is that it's a process of breaking up this relationship. So I want to talk about what does that mean? First off, it means a lot more than just sustained stabilization. The traditional medical model, disease model of addiction and treatment that's been prevailing for the last 60 to 70 years just focuses pretty much on beginning the process of recovery with sustained stabilization, sobriety, or abstinence. But from how I see it, is that it's a process of breaking up, and breaking up with this relationship. And what does that mean? Or what is this terrain? It's about dismantling denial and registering the emotional impact and emotional withdrawal that occurs during this process of breakup. So dismantling denial. What are we talking about dismantling denial? So this is just areas that you need to explore, and in the process of therapy and treatment, you go through either exercises and processes where you explore this, and you explore specific areas, whether it's in journal or workbook, or whether it's in group sharing, comparing notes. But either way, you're looking at these areas. You have to revisit these areas. The first area is about discovery, what I call discovery. When did the relationship begin? When did this happen? Well, and really what discovery is about is getting a snapshot, an emotional snapshot of what was going on in your life and outside in your relationships as well as inside yourself around the time when you first got involved in this relationship, when you first experienced the rush, the high, the relief, however the effect it had on you, it was at that time you got hooked. And so again, I talked before back about that from the disease model and medical model, that it really doesn't account for when your addiction started or when this relationship started. It's attributed to genetic and biochemical factors that account for you getting hooked and getting addicted. Well, I'm looking at this process of getting this relationship forming and you getting hooked and this addiction starting as an emotional process. So what we want here is for you to register that when this relationship was forming, there was a pretty high level of pain and distress going on inside of you. And this means that you discovered relieved you of that pain. Either you were able to escape from it, or feel better, or disconnect from it, or get excited. It took you away from the pain. So you want to start connecting that this relationship has to do with you need to relieve the pain that you were in at that time. Okay, the second area that needs to be explored in this phase of recovery, the breakup, is about recognition and admission, recognizing and admitting that, and seeing that this relationship was a bad relationship, in that it was destroying your life. You were powerless. You were powerless, you were out of control, you couldn't stop no matter what was going on, no matter how bad your life was going, no matter how many problems you were having, you couldn't stop. You lost yourself in this relationship. You were completely in over your head. It was all consuming, and it was carried on in secrecy. It was all carried on in secrecy, and so these are aspects of this relationship that, because denial was so strong, you never got to recognize, let alone admit, that this was the reality, this was the truth. So this is about becoming honest with yourself and cutting through denial. And again, this is a process. It doesn't happen in one time or in one day or in one process. It takes time to kind of cut through the denial and be able to see the relationship for what it is, register it, and then talk about it and admit it and come out and have that be real. So that's the second area that you're looking into. The third area that you want to kind of get clear on and cut through the denial and see for what it is the progression of this relationship and all that it's done to you and how it's affected you. And so what you want to be able to comprehend and register is that your involvement increased, so you got more and more consumed, more and more involved in it. So your frequency, the amounts that you consumed, just the amount of time that you spent going to and from, anticipating, coming down, going back to it, really progressed over time and increased. And then also the problems, whether they were legal in nature, whether they were DUIs or accidents or things that happened to you when you were drinking or in your addiction, or I'm talking about ways that you behaved, things that you've done to yourself and others that were uncharacteristic, that you would not have done had you not been addicted, and all the other ways that your life was affected, your work, how you were impaired. You were probably never on top of your game because you're always operating on 4 cylinders, because the rest of you was just trying to manage your life and maintain this addiction to the detriment of your health and your functioning. So you would need to be able to see that as this relationship progressed, all of your other relationships deteriorated and your level of functioning deteriorated, and you were not honest with yourself, and it had untold effects and progression. It's the progression that you need to see. That will tell you more clearly and irrefutably that this relationship was a bad relationship. And then I guess after all of this work is done, at some point there's a kind of goodbye where you recognize that, you know what? This is over. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. It doesn't serve me. It's not healthy. It's basically killing me and destroying my life. So now, I think I mentioned at the beginning of this, the 2 parts of this breakup process is dismantling denial and the emotional impact, registering and getting through the emotional impact and emotional withdrawal. So what am I talking about with the emotional impact? Well, most obviously, it may not be so obvious. The second and third parts of it, the recognition that the relationship is bad and the progression is more obvious, has an emotional component to it that we'll get to in a minute. The discovery part of it, when you look at what was going on in your life when you first got addicted, there is an emotional component of just beginning to connect to the feelings of pain and turmoil, whether it's loneliness, isolation, shame, fear, sadness, hurt, anger, whatever. There's all of a sudden your emotional life is coming back to you. And this is not this, when you go through this discovery process and go back to when the relationship was forming, some of it is cognitive, where you connect, you understand intellectually in your head that it was a tough time in your life and you got into this addiction to escape. However, when you begin to register the full impact of the pain that you were in at the time, it's going to feel different. All of a sudden, you're going to be awakening to your emotions that were not available to you, that you were disconnected from because of denial. Similarly, when you go to the next part of this that I talked about, the powerlessness, the realization that this relationship was bad and that you were out of control and couldn't stop, and you were so lost in the relationship and you were so over your head, there's often the emotional impact of that is huge, because so much of your addiction is about not feeling your feelings, disconnected from your feelings, and living in this sort of delusion that everything's okay. And when you begin to register that you are powerless and your life has become completely unmanageable, what's most common is the component or the experience of deep shame and remorse and disappointment with yourself, because your whole existence and identity was based on that everything's okay, you could handle it, and it wasn't bad to you or anyone else. And seeing that all of that was wrong, all of that was delusion and denial, and the real reality was that you were just, this relationship was destroying your life and you couldn't stop. So what happens in this phase is that you get to the emotional benefits, some of the emotional effects of this is that you get to a place of humility, of vulnerability, of courage, and being able to take responsibility. Okay, so and then moving to the third part is that the emotional impact of waking up out of denial, out of your slumber, and seeing the devastation that you wrecked in your life. Oh my God, I mean, there's a lot of shame and remorse, and just picking up the pieces, like just you've been in the dark and you wake up and you turn on the light and see that your world is in shambles, and there's a lot to pick up, there's a lot of pieces to kind of put back together. It's very overwhelming, it's very shaming, and it's hard to come to terms with that, feel peace and acceptance within yourself. So so that's pretty much those are the key areas of the breakup that need to be gone through. And you're dismantling denial, which is the denial I'm talking about, how your perceptions are distorted, how your experience is altered, how your thought process is flawed, and you're coming back and seeing that. And then you're also experiencing the emotional impact of that. And also, I just want to wind this up by talking about the emotional impact of withdrawal once you're able to go through all of these steps and cover these areas in the breakup phase, when you're saying goodbye, and once you let go of this relationship, there's going to be usually a significant emotional impact of withdrawal, where, oh my God, you were having this means of relief to disconnect you from your pain, and then all of a sudden you don't have that, and there's a lot of emotions that are coming up for you that you feel very ill-equipped to deal with. So this emotional withdrawal period is very overwhelming.